So I'll start off a little bit talking about myself, just introducing myself. I don't ever take it for granted and think everybody knows who I am. So I'll give you guys a little introduction, and then I want to talk a little bit about baseline and establishing a plan, and then we'll go from there. So I always start off with a joke. So this is a real video introducing me, and oh, hang on a second here, guys. Sorry. There we go.
Give and go. Here's Briere. Shoots. He hit the post. Tanana play the puck. What heat on that shot. I swear, if you look at Cam Briere, he looks like Danny Briere, Flyers general manager, but there is no relation. I did hear, though, from Kendall Grayson that I believe Cam Briere's father, Steve, is the equipment manager from the Minnesota Wild.
So I always like to play that one. Just when you think that everybody knows who you are, nobody cares and nobody knows who you are. So I always play that video to stay humble. So, but I'll,
Give and go. Here's
oh, sorry guys. So a little bit about myself. Played junior hockey in the USHL. Actually was an MVP in that. Played Division One. Was an All-American in college. I signed professionally and played 10 years.
10 years.
Um, coached in the NHL for 12 years. I did 2 years as an assistant. I did as a head. Um, and then I coached Team Canada in the World Cup of Hockey. And the reason I put my family on here, guys, is as I go through this presentation, you guys will understand that everything I do as a coach, and we have some people on the call. One of them was Jessie McCabe. I wanted her to pipe up and say hello, but um, we always try to bring all our goalies into our family and create a family atmosphere. I just think that goaltenders a lot of times are left on their own, and parents are left on their own and wondering what to do with their kids. And we've been fortunate enough to go through it as coaches. We've been fortunate enough to go through it as parents, and we try to create a community for everybody. So, as I said, as I go through this presentation, you'll understand. But this is my family. That's me playing in Winnipeg, Manitoba, little kid, Omaha, playing professionally and playing college, and then coaching in the NHL. I say 45 years. I'm 49 years old. I have never ever played a game of forward in my life. I have been a goalie from day one. So I've just absolutely fallen in love with being a goalie since I was a little kid, and never tried any other position. So a little bit about our schools. We started off when I graduated university. I built a week-long camp in Winnipeg. Years later, after we had a couple locations, that turned into week-long camps, overnight camps in Bemidji, Minnesota, elite camps, prospects camps, unlock goaltending in our academy. Um, so that at the end of the day, doesn't matter about me. Everybody's on the call because everybody wants to know about the results, right? And what you're going to hear today is, if anybody's listened to my speeches before, um, or listened to me speak at the World Championships, it's all about results. And everything you're going to hear today is how we got these results, right? So 10 years in a row in the NHL, top 10 goalie, 3 All-Stars, coached such great goaltenders as Reimer and Anderson, Campbell, Jones, Decord, Grubauer, just to name a couple. My 1 year of coaching Division One college hockey, I happened to coach Cam Talbot, and he signed in the NHL, and he was a wonderful goaltender. And juniors, 6 years in a row, we won goalie of the year, and that's when I got the call from the Toronto Maple Leafs to come and coach the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then when I was here in Minnesota, when we first got here, I coached the high school team and just happened to win the state championship. And we had a goaltender by the name of Jake Ottinger, which you guys might recognize. So here's some of the results over the years. So today, how did we get these results? And one of the big things, and guys, I'll ask you if you don't mind if you could mute your your Zoom, then that way everybody can hear. But how did we get these results? So the first thing is building a foundation. So I really believe in you have to innovate. No matter what, the game is constantly changing. And you know even at the beginning of my NHL career, what was working and that isn't working. And you guys you guys have all recognized that right now. Everybody's all about the reverse, right? And whether they should do it or not do it. But 10 years ago, that was, automatic. And now the shooters get smarter. There's more and more video, all the social media, everybody sees all the weaknesses, and players are working on it constantly. And so the goalies have to stay ahead of the curve. They have to be constantly innovating. Working on the mental strength. We'll talk about that, mental strengthening, technical and tactical, sports vision, and strength and flexibility, and then a nurturing environment. This is one that not a lot of people talk about, but I talk about it all the time. And I think that that's probably the most important thing is having a nurturing environment. I think everybody in the world just wants to be loved and feel belonging and feel part of a group and feel good about themselves. And if you can create that safe environment for the goalies, I think that that goes a long way towards their success and their mental health. But so innovation, let's go through some innovation. You guys have probably seen that green dummy there. Um, all the teams in the NHL use it. I just saw the other day the Chicago Blackhawks were using it in practice. It's not green anymore, but that was the very first one. We invented those dummies about 15, 16 years ago. And and then the light up cones, they have the fit lights now and the blaze lights. Well, 15, 16, no, 2008. So, wow, geez, 16 years ago. 16 years ago, those were my students in university when I was teaching university, invented those cones. And they actually went on a show called The Shark's Tank and won. So that was pretty cool, pretty cool. But they made them for us for the goalies to work on reaction time because we used to always say go, and the reality is nothing is audible in goaltending. Everything is visual. And so we were like, well, how can we make the goalies faster and quicker visually? And so that's where we came up with the cones. Here's Freddie Anderson working in the summertime on vision training. And then here's us working with Jack Campbell in the NHL with the screen dummies and then in practice. So next innovation. So when I was coaching college hockey, and actually before that, I was playing professionally in Europe. One of my teammates, who was a captain of the team, he retired. Jason Daly. He played at Cornell University, and he became a salesman for Dartfish. And Dartfish was one of the very first video editing softwares. And he actually just gave me a license, and he was like, "Hey, Stevie, I think this would be really cool for your goalie schools." And so we got the first license of that back in 2003. And we started doing, when I was in Alabama, teaching and coaching. I started coaching kids on from a distance. This is actually Jake Allen. I coached Jake Allen when he was in San Antonio and Peoria in the AHL from a distance from Alabama. So that was pretty fun. But all of these things that I'm mentioning to you guys, these are all pieces that go together to build in a goalie, okay? I want you to keep that in mind. I'm not just showing you things that we invented. This was an Excel spreadsheet that I had a guy make for me. I wish I was smart enough to make this, but I was not. And one of my friends here in Minnesota made it for me. But as I go through the games, I can mark down all the shots, where they were shot, where the goals went in, and then on the right hand side is the cumulative, so I can keep track. So I get a real quick snapshot of where my goalie is at any time. And I use this from little kids all the way up. And it also, as a parent, instead of saying, "Hey, it went in here or didn't go in here," or these are hard facts, right? I'm not, you're not, it's not an opinion. It's just, hey, these are the numbers, right? So now I want to start to get into the mental side of things for you guys. All right, that was the innovation part, but I want to get into the mental side. And this is something that I do with all goalies. I've done it for years and years now. A friend of mine by the name of Gord McFarland introduced me to DISC assessments. And when I was doing entrepreneurship and building companies, We used to do it with management teams, trying to get the right people on the management team in order to have a successful launch. And I started using it with goalies. And what I found was it didn't really matter what personality the goalies had. It was the fact that you were making the effort to find out who they are. How do they learn? As opposed to, this is how I teach, and that's all there is to it. And so I started changing the way I taught to be according to the goalie. So I'll give you an example. Freddie Anderson is a very high C. He has to know exactly why we're doing the drill, what's the time in the game, how many people are on the ice, what's the score. Like he wants to know every detail when we do a drill. Whereas I had other goalies in the NHL, they would just say, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And usually those guys are more high D kind of guys, D and I's. S's and C's are usually a little bit more calculating and cautious, right? And so knowing that already start to build the foundation of trust because you're making the effort to learn them first and then curtail your talking, your coaching, your training to them. So here's a little video
What
for
does
you
it
guys.
take to do the impossible? What does it take to achieve paradigm shifting, never seen before breakthroughs? As I mentioned earlier, it is technically defined as an optimal state of consciousness, one where we feel our best and we perform our best. Is that flow is definable, that flow is universal. When we end up in the deep now, when time gets shut down in a flow state, anxiety disappears. Your stress hormones flood out of your system. Move into flow. We take in more information per second. So data acquisition goes up. We pay more attention to that information. So salience goes up. We find faster connections between that incoming information and older ideas. So pattern recognition goes up. What we now know is that flow states are hackable. But the first thing you need to know is the most obvious. Flow follows focus. It can only show up when all of our attention is focused in the right here, the right now. I have to explain this number, 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. So that is the amount of time it took Roger Bannister to run the world's first 4-minute mile. But Roger Bannister runs the first 4-minute mile. And then a month later, somebody breaks his record. A couple months later, somebody else breaks his record. In fact, within 10 years, teenagers had broken that record. So you got to ask yourself, how is that possible? This is known to researchers as the Bannister effect. And what it really is an extremely tight coupling between the mind and the body, right? You have to believe you are capable of achieving the impossible before you can actually achieve the impossible.
So I play that video for a lot of reasons. It starts off with one, everybody on this call probably knows or has felt in their life at one point, whether you played sports or you didn't, whether you know, you're writing a paper in school, you were playing a sport, any sport, you were doing a job, you know, fixing a car or whatever the case may be, where you're so focused on that job that time disappears. You know, 8 hours goes by like that because you're so focused on it. And everybody, that's called the flow state. And we all know that in order to be at your peak, you want to be in that flow state. That's when we have the most success. And so, one, it starts off with belief. You got to believe that you can be great, right? That you can do the job, that you can outwork somebody, you can outdo everybody. You have to have a certain amount of belief in yourself. But the other part about flow state is it's hackable, right? And so EDSO is the chemicals in your body that create the flow state. So it's endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And the reason that this is so important, those chemicals, is they flow up into your brain, and that's what gives you the euphoric feeling of flow state, where you're just so focused and working. Those endorphins are released in your body very specifically. So endorphins is the work ethic, right? They call it the runner's high. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really want to run 26 miles. And they run marathons and their toenails fall off. I'm like, nah, that doesn't sound very fun to me. But they don't even feel it because they're in this high of running and this euphoric high, and it's because they worked hard. So the first thing is unless you work hard, you don't get the flow state. You don't get that feeling from the endorphins. The second part is dopamine. And dopamine is that feeling of achieving a goal. And so a lot of times when I talk to goalies, I always ask them, what's your goal? And even in the NHL, well, I want to win a Stanley Cup. I want to win a Vezina trophy. Jake Ottinger just did it today. He said he had a bad season. He was mad at himself. He wants to win a Stanley Cup. He wants to win a Vezina. And what's the problem with that? The problem with that is you only achieve it at the end of the season. And so it's hard to stay focused and not when you're trying to do something at the end of the season, as opposed to setting small goals for every day and being your absolute best every day, achieving a goal every day so that you walk away feeling that you made a step forward. Um, Serotonin is the leadership drug, right? If I was to tell you guys, I know I look a lot bigger than on camera, but I'm actually 5'8". So how does a 5'8" little person play 10 years of professional hockey, All-American in college, and MVP in the USHL? It's it's because I had a goal and then I was willing to do whatever it took. I was going to be the leader of my own life and do whatever it took to accomplish the goal. And so the kids need to take responsibility for what they want to accomplish, right? It can't be us as parents, it has to be them. Um, and then the oxytocin is what I talked about before. It's that feeling of family, that feeling of community, teammates, right? And as goalies, this is a big one because we're constantly told, well, you just go down at that end and you work by yourself. And then, hey, you're the goalie. You need to sit in the corner over here. And I can tell you guys, in the NHL, the first couple weeks of the season, all of my coaching was around making the goalies part of the team. Whether it was, I'd bring a case of Gatorades, put it in the goalie stall, and I'd say every day I want you to challenge a new guy on the team for a Gatorade. And now I'm making that up because Gatorade's free in the NHL, but maybe it's a nice steak dinner or something. But my point is that I wanted the goalies to be best friends with everybody on the team. Most goalies, they end up talking to the one defenseman that sits beside him and nobody else. And so that's another big one. That's also what we try to do here with our goalies is try to make them part of the family. Like anytime they want, Josh could feel like he can pick up the phone and call me and ask anything at all and be there for him, right? That sense of community. So the reason I say that this is so important is mental strengthening, guys. To me, and I would say to you guys, I screwed up. I've made some real mistakes in my career. Early on, I didn't understand these things. I was just like, hey, be happy. Like you're in the NHL, or it's great. And when you try to work on the mental side when they're already hurt, is usually really, really hard to turn them around. So when you're a young goaltender, and the reason I'm doing this today for 12 to 16-year-olds is I think they're the most influential. They're just coming into puberty, they're just coming out of elementary, going into high school or junior high or high school. There's a lot of new things going on. They're going from competitive hockey to really competitive hockey. They're going from youth hockey to trying to get drafted in juniors. There's all these things that are pulling on them, and the mental toughness becomes even more and more important. And it's like anything else, right? You don't work on your biceps and your muscles after you get injured. You work on them before you get injured so that you don't get injured. And so mental is the same thing, right? So many times you don't ever pay attention to it until there's an injury, let's call it, right? And so daily exercises on mental strengthening, and I'll go through that a little bit with you guys, but not letting things build up, clearing the mechanism, letting go, letting go. What do we tell all goalies? You let in a goal, just let it go. Well, it's easy to say that, but when you're in the competition of a game and the emotions of a game, it's really hard to do that. And so it takes practice before it ever happens in a game. Um, and then constant happiness. For me, I believe that happiness is the key to everything. I think it's the key to life. My favorite book, if you guys ever want a book to read, it's called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acor. And it's all about that people that are the most successful are the happiest when they're in the chase of trying to be successful. Doesn't mean they're always the happiest after they get the success, because then there's a sometimes a down, or you know, because they got to the top. But happiness is a really big important thing. And so I talk about happiness a lot with the kids. So how do we do all these things? Routine, knowing you did the work. I think this is one of the big ones. So many times I see goalie coaches say, "Oh, hey, do this shuffle, or do this T push, or do this butterfly slide, or do this, do this, do this, do this, do this." And it's kind of like when we go to school, guys. We went to school, and the math teacher sits up there on the wall and does all the equations and shows you how to do the quadratic equation. And then you get home and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Right? Like because you didn't do it. You didn't do it, so then you don't know you did the work, and you didn't learn anything. Um, Being in the present moment, that again, very difficult, very, very difficult to do. And as these kids get older and they get into these pressure packed situations, they tend to think of, I can't tell you how many goalies I work with this year that all they talked about is, oh man, I got to get drafted. And oh man, I got to get drafted to this so that I can go to college. And oh man, I got to go to college so that I can go to the NHL. And they're thinking 3 and 4 years down the line, when all that matters is the present moment. If you're the best that you can be in the present moment, the rest will take care of itself. But if you're so busy worried about the future that you'll never get there. Um, Building confidence, we know we've talked about a little bit. Controlling the controllables is another big one. So how do we do that? So here's an example of a practice plan that I built that I do with the goalies. But what I wanted you guys to see is that every single day of the week, there's a different mental strengthening exercise that goes along with the practice plan. So many people have just the practice plan. I make sure that I have all the pieces, right? The breathing and the mental side, and then our technical and tactical. And then I give it to the goalies the night before so that they know what's coming. This was an app that I built in Toronto for our goalies there. It was just an app that they can just do on their phone. And every day it was a daily exercise on happiness and gratitude and journaling and so on. But the goalies loved it. They could just carry it in their phone, boom, 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 and they would do it. This is another one for you guys that I did. I started it with James Reimer, and he loved it so much. Now, over the years, this is an old one, but over the years, it's take grown arms and legs and turned into something totally different. But at the end of the day, it's reminders every day. And I'm going to share a little story for you guys, and the power of this every day. My son was playing junior hockey. This is probably 4 years ago. And it was his first year juniors. He was 16 years old playing in the USHL. It's an older league, so it was tough, right? And he had been the leading scorer of every team he ever played on. In his first year juniors, he had 2 goals. And he was worried, and he was down in the dumps and depressed and everything. And every single day, I made him a postcard, a different postcard. And one day it was a postcard on happiness. And there's all these pictures of him playing hockey when he was happy. And then one of the days was on work ethic. And then it was him working hard. And then it was one days of him scoring goals. And every day I'd put it underneath his pillow, and my wife would help write one week. My daughter would write another week. And every day was a different postcard. We had 15 different postcards. The next year, he was the leading scorer in the team. Do you think I taught him how to score the goals? No. What we did is we grew that confidence every day that he could do it. And so why 12 to 16? I've already hit on it a little bit, but because they're their foundation, these are the critical years for me. They're the biggest years of a kid's life. As a goaltender, sorry, not in their life, but as a goaltender, it's the years where you build that foundation, and us as coaches can have the biggest impact. So what we've done here is we created a goalie academy here for goalies, and it's a little bit different. But we got True as our sponsor. True's providing goalie equipment for the goalies when they come to the academy, and we're the first ever one-to-one coaching to coach ratio. So it's pretty unbelievable. I'm really excited to introduce this to you guys. So part of the things that I've seen, everybody knows about academies being the latest and greatest, and everybody's doing them. And I really think they are beneficial. But I took all the things that I found to be difficult about academies. And the first thing is the goalies are usually the afterthought. I've seen from the East Coast to the West Coast, from Seattle, Washington down to Texas, the academies, it's like 15 minutes for the goalie, and then, hey, we need you guys to be targets in the net. And hey, you can have the top of the circle down, but then now we need you for the nets. And so in all honesty, they get 25% of the coaching that everybody else gets. The next thing is leaving home early. And for me, this is a big one. This one touches close to the heart because when I was coaching the Toronto Maple Leafs, it was during COVID, and my son had to leave home because there was no hockey in Canada. And so he went down and played in the US and played high school hockey and then went on to juniors. But I didn't get to see him play for a couple of years there, and it was devastating. But not only was it devastating, I would imagine that's probably why his first year of juniors he didn't score a lot of goals because he didn't have that mental strength built up. He didn't have that support system, and his first time away. And then the see all these kids go through depression of leaving home, losing their families, and having to do all that. So if you're on an elite goalie path, right? This is, I bet you all, you guys, I bet Josh, you guys are going through it now as this is kind of a similar thing, right? You go to a couple lessons a week and then you play your games. And then in the summertime, you go for a couple summer goalie camps and your equipment and travel and hotels and meals. You're looking at a minimum of $28,000 a year. That's minimum. But when you look at this, what are we missing? We just talked about building that foundation for the goalies. There's nothing about mental strengthening, right? You go to a lesson, the guy shoots pucks on you for an hour. Yes, you're working on technical, tactical, but there's nothing about the mental strengthening, right? There's no sports vision. Everybody, you guys have all seen Braden Holtby throwing up the water in the games, and he was kind of the first one to start that. Well, just so everybody knows, we were the ones that were the very first vision training program here in Minnesota. It was Dr. McDonald in the Vision Performance Center. And our first goalie we ever had was Braden Holtby. And our second goalie was Pecorine, and our third was Devin Dubnik. And three of them, 3 years in a row, went on to Vezina caliber seasons, which is a really cool thing. Now, there's a million vision guys, and they all do amazing jobs. But the point is everybody's working on their eyes as well. And it's not so much just the eyes, you can't really see your eyes bulging out because you did all these reps, but it's the speed of which your eyes read the play and then your brain recognizes what's happening, or your eyes see with the shot and then your brain reacting to making the save. Usually there's no video breakdown. You just go down for your hour lesson and then you leave, right? And there's no actual roadmap created. And then last but not least, it's a transactional thing. You come in for an hour, see you later. Maybe you go to a different goalie coach next week. Maybe there's no deep family culture created. And that's what we tried to do. So this goalie academy we've built is limited to 16 goalies. You get to work with me one-on-one. And then it's a 1-to-1 goalie ratio. So we have 4 goalie coaches that come in, and they're living here with us and coaching the goalies one-on-one with me. That's pretty cool. And so what happens is, in order to save the kids from missing time with their team, missing time with their family, we've created it where goalies fly in on a Sunday and they stay at our house. Parents are welcome to join them. We've got 4 bedrooms, 4 goalies a week come in. They stay at our house. We train for 24 hours, Monday through Thursday, and then they leave Thursday, make sure they don't miss their games on the weekend. Do that once a month for the season, and then the month of April as well. So you get 8 months of training, which works out to be 110 hours of ice time. Um, and then and if there was whatever reason, sometimes people are going to have to miss because of school, or maybe they have a tournament that goes during the week, Quebec Pee Wee tournament that goes all week. Um, they can come to any of the goalie schools for free in the summer. And so one of the other things about that is the schooling. So we've already got 7 kids signed up. And one of the things that we've had to do is write letters. And because I got my master's degree in coaching, my master's degree in school, and I coached in the NHL, I've been eligible for an elite athlete absence letter. And so I've had to go on and send these letters to schools to allow the kids to miss 4 days a month. But we haven't had any issues whatsoever. Everybody's been fine. I even talked on Friday to a Catholic school, and I thought, "Ooh, this might be tough," but they were fine with it, so it was cool. And then our biggest thing is we want the parents to come because we want the parents to be part of the process with us. And we want to make friends. You know, my wife is from Scotland, I'm from Canada, and we're living in Minnesota. We got no friends. We need to make some friends. So parents are welcome to come and join and be part of the whole process. This is our town of Stillwater. It's a little town just right on the water. Um, Wisconsin's on the other side. Unbelievable place. We love it here. We've lived here for the last 12 years now. And then this is the arena. We've got the arena every day from 9 to 3. We got the rink on one side, and then on the other side of the wall, we've got a full gym, synthetic ice for stick handling and shooting. And on the other side of the wall, you can't see it, but there's a turf area for the kids to do plyos and stretching and so on. And then at night, we have a tutor that comes in to do schoolwork with the kids, and then we usually finish up with a little video session. So, and then when the goalies go home, they send us video. We can go through the video with them. That's why I showed you guys the video editing. And that's how I started in the NHL. I would do the video editing and go over it remotely with all the goalies, all the prospects with the San Jose Sharks. And then the goalies get access to Unlock Goaltending, which is our online goalie school. And it has drills and exercises for every day of the week for the whole season. And it's not a Bible, it's a library. So, you know, if one day you can't do it, it's not a big deal. But if you need a drill to go to practice with, you have a library of drills to work on. And the mental side, vision, on ice and off ice are all in there. And then you have the access to call me anytime. And then what if all of this you could have for less than $100 an hour or even less, $11 an hour? And I'll show you guys that in a minute. I'm really proud of this. This is pretty exciting stuff. But so our goal is to make this an exclusive elite goalie training program, but make it affordable for everybody. You know, so we made personalized jerseys for everybody with patches on the jersey. I stole the idea from a European team, the Graz 99ers, but they have 9 patches where they can get sponsors and to cover the cost of the academy. And so everybody gets their own individual. I'll show you guys an example here in a second. But then it makes it about the goalies that want it the most, not just the goalies that can afford it, you know. That was my goal. So here's an example of the jersey. I've got the 9 patches. So if you get the 9 patches, you can come to the academy for an entire year for $2,000, which is $11 an hour, which is, you know, you can't even buy a burger anymore for $11. So unbelievable deal. Obviously, you got to put in the work to get the sponsors. If that's not an issue for you, then it's less than $100 an hour. That's an example of the jersey. Now, how it works is goalies go on to register. You would sign up for the academy, then you put your deposit down, and then you register for the Path to the Crease. Path to the Crease is our 501(c)(3). And so the goalies register, and then you go around and get companies, and they go here and donate. And then when they donate, it pairs them with the goalie, and then it just takes the money off your tuition. So pretty exciting stuff. So that just basically says what I said just now. And then so it's $20,000 a year if you just did nothing, and that works out to be less than $100 an hour. And then if you got the 9 sponsors, it would be $2,000 a year. So um, it's about as cheap as I could possibly make it to make it affordable for everybody. And the way you do admissions is you do a one-on-one Zoom with me and your family and our family. And the only reason we did that is we want good people. We want to create a good atmosphere. And you guys will understand again, like I said, I've got some testimonial videos here, but it's all about creating a family atmosphere and always having support for each other and helping each other out. I can't even tell you how many people emailed me and they're like they wanted to know about the mental side of the game, and then they wanted support. And so that's why I wanted to talk about that today to make sure that we hit on those things. So here's a testimonial for you guys.
Hi, my name is Dakota Sihanyuk, and I skated with Steve Briere at our goalie academy for 2 to 3 hours a day, every day for 4 years. Steve built a goalie focused program that not only emphasized things on the ice, but off the ice as well. I think Steve's coaching allowed me to reach a level that I don't think would have been possible any other route I took. I've never met a coach that's as passionate as Steve Briere is. Every single time we're on the ice, he gave us a drill that was very deliberate and it was for a reason. I think that every single day, the skates were really tailored to us, and he hit on things that I've never had any other coaches hit on. We would spend 30, 40 minutes just looking at angles, like with the strings on the net, the pucks like on the strings, and we'd slide them and see the angles for where the shooter had room to shoot, what he could see, what we needed to protect. And no other coach really hits on those things or takes the amount of time to hit on those things like Steve did. Looking back on my time at the academy, I had some of the best and most memorable hockey experiences. But what really sticks out to me is not the lessons that we learned on the ice, but it's the lessons that he taught us off the ice, where I still use to this day. Steve always emphasized that we weren't just a team and we weren't just hockey goalies. We were a family. And he is the only coach to this day that I've had that I can honestly say backs up his claim that we're a family. When Steve says you're a family, he really does mean it. And we still talk years later. Whenever we're in the same city, he'll still make the effort to meet up with me and see how I'm doing and really check in. I don't think you're ever going to find another goalie coach who puts in as much hard work and has as much passion as Steve. Any goalie that chooses to work with him is really going to give themselves the best opportunity to reach their own potential.
So that one's a really cool one for me. And I think it's the reason I like it so much is it's not just about how successful he was on the ice. Dakota played college hockey, but it wasn't Division One. It wasn't, the best college, but he still played college hockey. But he's actually a commercial airline pilot now. And, it's the lessons he learned from being a goalie he then used to transfer into real life, everyday life, and that work ethic of chasing your dreams and going after what you want in life. And I think that's super cool. I have 30 of these 35 goalies that came to my academy, and I got all of them to give me testimonials. And it's so cool to hear, Alexa Berg got her master's degree in nursing, and she played Division I college hockey and then got her nursing. And Austin Naylor became a commercial airline pilot. Cameron Madrid is now a fighter pilot for the U.S. Army. And so all these success stories that really weren't just hockey, they were success stories of what they went on to do, but they used the lessons they learned from being a goalie. And so I think that's super cool. And, we got guys like Vladimir Kramer, who was at our academy from Russia, and he went on to play in the KHL, and that was amazing as well. So we've got a lot of those stories, but I wanted to play that one. Dakota's in Florida and uh, doing the pilot thing, and I thought that was a really cool one. So anyways, I want to thank everybody for their time. And if anybody ever wants to meet one on one to hear about the academy, if anybody has any questions about the academy, all you got to do is click the QR code and schedule a time on Calendly, and we can talk about the academy. If anybody has any questions, I'll go back there one. If you guys want to give me a call or you guys want to email me, I'm always here. So